Hello and welcome to the Group 1 presentation on the degree of Authoritarian personality type and conformity. Within this poster, we will be discussing to what extent a person conforms depending on their authoritarian level. Before we begin, I'd just like to talk you through how this poster is going to be presented. As you can see, we have 5 separate boxes on the screen. The abstract, which will include who and where our participants are from, and also what we expect to find. Following that, we have the introduction, where we will talk about what research has influenced our proposal and also our hypothesis. Next is the methods section, which includes the subheadings participants, design, materials and procedure. And finally, the analysis, which is the last to be presented, and mentions how we intend to analyse our data. All references included in this presentation are in the box at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And before the presentation starts, we'd just like to talk about why we have chosen this research question.
As a group, the reason we have chosen this research question is because the study of authoritarian personality and conformity really interested us as a group, because we found that it was a really diverse subject. There has been lots of psychological research into this specific subject area. We chose the subject because we found it really informative and it's something we are really passionate about and could explore really well. Authoritarian personality types show blind allegiance to conventional beliefs about right and wrong. They also have respect for submission to already acknowledged authority. We found this interesting and thought it would be good to compare with conformity of young people in particular. Also, the belief in aggression toward those who do not subscribe to conventional thinking or who are different is a really distinct subject which can be explored. People who have an authoritarian personality typically hold a negative view of people in general and hold the belief that people would all lie, cheat or steal if given the opportunity. This is a very strong view and stereotypical judgment which displays a need for strong leadership and uncompromising power. As a group, we all found this topic fascinating and find comparing it with conformity is a really good fit.
Drawing our attention to the left of the poster, I'll begin by discussing the abstract. Our study started with the recruitment of 120 participants from both academic and non-academic backgrounds, aged between 18 to 25 years, making our study targeted towards young adults only. As a group of 6, we have decided upon recruiting 20 participants each. This will therefore reduce the research bias by us all being given the opportunity to recruit. As well as this, by enlisting academics and non-academics, we are being inclusive of the whole population, that population being young adults, in attempts to reduce the impact of the undergraduate crisis. Our participants are going to be selected through the process of voluntary response sampling via social media platforms to gain non-academic participants. Meanwhile, an email will be sent out to university students to partake in this study. This study looks into the relationship between levels of authoritarian personality and likeliness to conform. As this is a correlational design, our 2 variables are referred to as the predictor and the outcome. The predictor being the level of authority one has, and the outcome is what is dependent on the predictor, which makes it the measure of conformity. Our study uses 2 questionnaires, one being the fascist scale, also known as the F scale, which was created by Theodore Adorno. This measures a person's authoritarian level, and the other questionnaire being the conformity one, which measures the degree to which a person conforms. The investigations above are based around the research into the degree of authoritarian personality type and conformity done by Ash. We can use previous research and a method of correlational analysis to suggest that those who scored higher on the F scale scored lower on the conformity questionnaire. In contrast, those participants who scored lower on the F scale score higher on the conformity questionnaire, thus supporting the idea that the level of authoritarian personality an individual has directly affects the likelihood of them conforming under group pressures. Because our study is a relationship and a parametric design, we will use Pearson's R as the statistical test. We should expect to find differences in participants who scored higher on the F scale in comparison to those who scored lower. However, as previous experiments do suggest, those who frequently conform don't just rely on their level of authority. Rather, once the unanimity of the group has been broken and test difficulty increases, participants who were low F scorers begin to question the reliability of other participants' answers to which they would have normally agreed with. Overall, we can expect the result to be a negative relationship between one's authoritarian score and the degree to which they conform.
Following on from the abstract, we will now be looking over our introduction to our study on conformity and its relation to the authoritarian personality. The authoritarian personality typically characterises someone who is extremely obedient and, more often than not, unquestioning to authority. Individuals who identify strongly with this personality type are more often tolerant to the conservative ways of thinking within most aspects of life. However, individuals who identify more with being a conformist, according to Crutchfield in 1955, will be more likely to be seen yielding to group pressures, meaning they change their behaviours to fit everyone else's within a particular environment. The hypothesis for our study is that there will be a negative correlation between the levels of authoritarianism and the levels of conformity within an individual. There have been many studies over time that aim to investigate the relationship between the authoritarian personality and people who are conformists. In 1971, two psychologists named Moore and Krupat investigated the relationship between the levels of someone's authoritative personality and how likely they are to conform. They experimentally confronted 45 male undergraduates who varied in levels of authoritarianism, with disagreements from high or low status sources on an ambiguous perceptual task. The results of the study showed that the male undergraduates who were considered to have low authoritative traits conformed greatly to the high status source but not the low. Nonetheless, the participants with a highly authoritative personality did not conform to either of the sources. Therefore, the results of the study showed that those with a high authoritarian levels conformed far less than the individuals who did not consider themselves to be authoritative. However, there have been other studies that suggest otherwise. Steiner and Johnson conducted a study in 1963 where they stated that previous investigations have suggested individuals with an authoritarian personality have been found to be far more likely to conform. So compared to the previously mentioned study, Steiner and Johnson are suggesting that there will be a positive correlation between the two. However, we aim to prove this wrong with our study and hypothesis, which, to reiterate, is that we believe there will be a negative correlation between the level of conformism and the level of authoritarianism.
Following on from our previous point, our method includes variables such as design, participants, materials, procedure, and ethics. Our questionnaires will include 120 participants, male and female, in the age group 18 to 25 years, and they will be of a mixture of an academic and non-academic background. Our participants will be gained through the process of voluntary response sampling. Our design is based off of a correlational study. For example, our participants who score higher on the F-scale test for authoritarian personality will score lower on the conformity questionnaire, providing us with a negative correlation. Also, participants will be able to see each other via a video link to imitate a typical group interaction. The materials for our online questionnaires include 2 individual questionnaires which will be used and then compared. The first study will measure authoritarian personality using the F-scale, and the correlating study will measure conformity using an online questionnaire similar to Laporte et al.'s study in 2010. To formulate these questionnaires, pilot drafts will be produced and trialled out on a small group in relation to our target population. From this, questions will be provided and answers appropriate to the study purpose will be duplicated in the real-life questionnaires. For the F-scale, there will be 25 questions in total, 5 of which will be reverse scored. These questions will be in the format of the Likert scale, meaning that participants will have options ranging from strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. Each option will have a value attached ranging from 1 to 5. Our scoring of the questionnaire will be at a minimum of 25 marks out of a maximum of 125. As participants will score a minimum of 1 mark per question. For conformity, we focused on the recording of 2 participants' incorrect responses. When interpreting these results, we will use a scatter graph and a linear regression line to see the correlation. In relation to reliability of the study, participant bias may occur, hence reverse scoring has been put in place to combat this. Our procedure begins by using the F-scale to measure the participant's level of authoritarian personality through an online questionnaire. Additionally, in order to achieve the purpose of the question title, we adapt the original study by Ash's 1956 research into conformity, and we focus on the advance of the social context to a virtual environment. Our ethical approval will be sought before the start of any data collection. After the study had taken place, both participants were debriefed in regards to the experiment.
After the study takes place, participants will be debriefed on the experiment as a whole. At this point, participants will be given the opportunity to ask any questions and withdraw their data from the study if they do not wish to continue further.
Our analysis states that all participant scores from the F-scale will be correlated with the scores from the conformity questionnaire. The aim of this would be that we are looking into the relationship between the levels of authoritarian personality and how it will affect the extent to which a young person conforms, with the belief that the negative correlation will be produced. Our outcome variable, being the measure of which one conforms, is dependent on the level of authority one has, this being the predictive variable. In summary, to round up and finish our presentation, our whole aim will be to find out the degree of authoritarian personality types and how they link and influence conformity for young people. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.